Banned texts reveal you're not who you think you are. Humanity is divided into three distinct species: light beings, earthbound humans, and fireborn souls. Each type has unique awakening methods that were deliberately hidden. If you've always felt different, if conventional spiritual practices don't work, or if you feel an unexplainable transformative force within you, there's a reason. Authorities destroyed this knowledge because a humanity conscious of its diversity would be impossible to control. Stay until the end to discover exactly which type you are, what characterizes each one, and how this completely revolutionizes your spiritual journey. There's a truth so explosive about human nature that it was deliberately erased from official history. Ancient Gnostic texts reveal that humanity isn't a uniform mass, but rather three distinct species inhabiting the same planet. This revelation completely changes our understanding of spirituality and consciousness awakening. Light beings carry the pure energy of creation, while earthbound humans were molded for material obedience. Among them exist those born of sacred fire, carriers of a transformative force that challenges all systems. Jesus himself recognized these differences when he spoke in distinct ways to each type of person. Ancient mysticism preserved this knowledge through secret codes, knowing that such gnosis could revolutionize our perception of reality. This isn't a modern theory, but ancient wisdom that explains why some naturally awaken to illumination while others remain trapped. Light beings represent the first manifestation of divine consciousness on the earthly plane. They don't need to seek spirituality, because they already are spirituality incarnate. Imagine people who naturally gravitate toward the occult, who feel a deep connection to higher dimensions since childhood. These are the carriers of primordial energy, fragments of the source of all that is who chose to experience human form. Their mission involves awakening others through example, not preaching. When you meet someone whose mere presence makes you question consensus reality, you're probably in the presence of a light being. They're rare but recognizable by the inexplicable peace they emanate and the wisdom that transcends their formal education. Gnosticism always knew these beings walk among us, serving as living bridges between the human and divine. Earthbound humans form the majority of the world's population, created specifically to inhabit the material plane. Their energy is deeply rooted in physical experience, finding purpose through work, family, and tangible achievements. There's nothing inferior about this nature. It's simply a different manifestation of consciousness. These individuals can awaken to spirituality, but usually need structures, rituals, and concrete practices to access elevated states. Jesus used parables because he understood that earthbound folks learn through practical examples and visual metaphors. When an earthbound person decides to walk the path of illumination, their journey often involves disciplines like daily meditation, fasting, or specific mysticism practices. They're the builders of civilization, transforming spiritual inspiration into physical reality. Their contribution to consciousness awakening happens through manifesting elevated values in the concrete world. The fireborn carry an energy that both creates and destroys, being catalysts of great transformations. This fiery force compels them to question everything, dismantle obsolete systems, and inaugurate new possibilities. They can't accept ready-made answers about spirituality. They need to experiment, test, and discover for themselves. Think of spiritual revolutionaries who changed religious paradigms throughout history. Their energy is restless, always seeking to expand boundaries of occult knowledge and gnosis. In consciousness awakening, they're the pioneers exploring unknown territories of human experience. They might seem destructive to outside observers, but their function is to clear the ground so the new can emerge. Jesus recognized these beings when he spoke about bringing fire to earth and dividing families through truth. They're the agents of spiritual evolution, forcing humanity to transcend its self-imposed limitations. This ancient wisdom about the three human types wasn't preserved by accident. It contains fundamental keys to understanding our own nature and accelerating our consciousness awakening. Recognizing which energy predominates in you isn't about superiority, but about authenticity and spiritual efficiency. A light being who tries to force earthbound practices gets frustrated, just like an earthbound person seeking advanced mystical experiences without adequate preparation. Gnosticism teaches that each type has an optimal path to illumination, respecting their intrinsic nature. But there's something even more disturbing in this revelation, discovering why this knowledge was systematically erased from collective consciousness. The forces controlling spiritual information always knew that a humanity conscious of its diversity would be impossible to manipulate. The history you know about spirituality was carefully edited to hide a revolutionary truth. The neogenic doctrine, which described humanity's fundamental diversity, represented a deadly threat to all control systems. This wasn't just another ancient philosophy. It was a liberation manual revealing how different types of human energy could awaken their consciousness in unique ways. When religious and political authorities discovered that such knowledge would make humanity uncontrollable, they began a systematic campaign of destruction. Entire libraries were burned, wise men were persecuted, and sacred texts were rewritten to promote a uniform version of human experience. Ancient Gnosticism preserved fragments of this wisdom, but most was lost forever. Jesus himself taught about these human differences, but his deepest teachings about consciousness awakening were deliberately omitted from official texts. Authentic illumination was always seen as dangerous by those who profit from spiritual ignorance. Imagine discovering there's a specific type of energy running through your veins, a force that determines how you best access elevated states of consciousness. The neogenic doctrine didn't just describe the three human types, but offered detailed maps for each category's consciousness awakening. Light beings had contemplative methods, earthbound folks followed structured practices, and Fireborn used radical transformation techniques. This personalization of mysticism made spirituality exponentially more effective. When a person discovered their true energetic nature, they could accelerate their spiritual development by decades. Compare this to generic methods offered by conventional religions, where everyone follows the same ritual regardless of their internal constitution. Personalized gnosis was so powerful, it transformed ordinary seekers into illuminated masters in record time. Authorities realized that a spiritually empowered population would never accept blind submission to external power systems. The suppression process didn't happen overnight, but through a meticulously planned strategy over centuries. First, original. Texts were declared heretical, forcing practitioners to hide their knowledge in occult symbols. Then diluted versions were created, maintaining the form but removing the real transformative power. Jesus had taught about consciousness awakening through specific methods for each human type, but these instructions were replaced with generic dogmas. Mysticism schools teaching differentiated practices were infiltrated and corrupted from within. Authentic spirituality was gradually replaced by empty rituals that kept people in states of spiritual dependence. Gnostic masters who resisted were physically eliminated, while their teachings were distorted to serve control agendas. The result was a spiritually amnesic humanity, disconnected from its own energetic diversity and inner strength. The consequences of this suppression reverberate to this day in our collective consciousness awakening experience. Millions of people try to force spiritual practices inadequate for their energetic nature, generating frustration and abandonment of the mystical path. Light beings enroll in structured courses that suffocate their natural intuition, while earthbound folks throw themselves into advanced experiences without adequate preparation. Fireborn are labeled as problematic when they question spiritual dogmas, being expelled from communities that should support their growth. This generalized confusion isn't accidental. It's the direct result of systematic destruction of the neogenic doctrine. Modern Gnosticism tries to recover these lost teachings, but works with incomplete fragments of once revolutionary wisdom. Contemporary spirituality operates as a trial and error system, when it could be a precise science of inner transformation. Jesus knew exactly how to guide each type of person to illumination, but that knowledge was buried under layers of religious misinformation. The rediscovery of these lost principles is beginning to happen through brave seekers who question official narratives. When someone finally understands their true energetic nature and applies adequate consciousness awakening methods, the results are spectacular. Spirituality stops being a struggle against your own nature and becomes a harmonious dance. With your innate capacities, mysticism recovers its original effectiveness, producing profound transformations in months instead of decades. But this individual rediscovery is just the first step of a much larger process. There's something even more sinister operating behind the scenes of human experience, a force that not only suppressed knowledge, but actively keeps humanity imprisoned in a constructed reality. The very fabric of reality we experience might not be what it seems. The reality you consider normal is actually a meticulously constructed prison by an intelligence that feeds on human ignorance. Ancient Gnosticism revealed the existence of the demiurge, an entity that isn't the source of all that is, but rather a cosmic architect who created this material matrix to capture divine sparks. This revelation explodes our conventional understanding of spirituality and consciousness awakening. Unlike the true creator, the demiurge operates through limitation, fear and control, keeping humanity unconscious of its original divine nature. Jesus knew this truth when he spoke about the prince of this world and taught methods to transcend its influences. The energy moving this system doesn't seek our illumination, but our perpetual dependence on external structures. Genuine mysticism always recognized that truly awakening means escaping this dimensional prison, not simply rearranging the furniture inside it. This isn't conspiracy theory, but ancient gnosis preserved by occult traditions that understood the illusory nature of consensual reality. The archons function as guardians of this cosmic prison, entities programmed to keep each human type within specific limitations. They're not demons with horns, but control frequencies operating through systems, institutions, and even repetitive thoughts. For light beings, archons create spiritual distractions that keep them spinning in mystical circles without real progress. Earthbound folks are bombarded with material responsibilities that consume all their energy for consciousness awakening. Fireborn face active suppression of their transformative nature, being labeled as problematic or dangerous. Every time you feel an inexplicable force pulling you back to limiting patterns, you're experiencing direct, archontic influence. Gnosticism teaches specific techniques to recognize and neutralize these interferences, but first you need to accept they exist. Jesus demonstrated mastery over archontic forces when he transformed apparently impossible situations through application of superior spiritual principles. The structure of this prison reality is designed to drain human energy through infinite cycles of desire, frustration, and external seeking. Observe how modern society operates: work that consumes your vitality, entertainment that narcotizes your consciousness, and belief systems that promise future salvation while keeping you powerless in the present. This isn't evolutionary accident, but deliberate design to capture and process human vital energy. Mainstream spirituality was co-opted to serve this system, offering only temporary relief without true consciousness awakening. Practices that would actually liberate you from the archontic matrix are labeled as dangerous or heretical. Authentic mysticism was always revolutionary because it teaches how to exit the game completely, not just play better within established rules. When Jesus spoke about not being of this world, he was describing a state of consciousness that transcends basic demiurgic programming. Genuine illumination isn't escapism, but the ability to operate from higher frequencies while still inhabiting physical form. Modern technology has exponentially amplified archontic control power through devices that capture human attention 24 hours a day. Social media, continuous news cycles, and infinite entertainment create a state of mental dispersion that makes deep consciousness awakening impossible. Every notification, every endless scroll, every digital drama feeds the system that nourishes itself on fragmented human mental energy. The algorithms governing these platforms aren't neutral. They amplify exactly the emotional states that keep you energetically drained and spiritually asleep. Compare your capacity for concentration and inner peace from 10 years ago to today, The degradation isn't coincidence. Modern Gnosticism needs to include digital detox as fundamental spiritual practice, recognizing that electronic devices are direct portals of archontic influence. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert, not out of masochism, but because he understood that awakening requires periods of total disconnection from controlling frequencies. Spirituality that doesn't address technology's impact on consciousness is incomplete spirituality. The most disturbing aspect of this revelation is recognizing how many choices we consider free are actually programmed responses to archontic stimuli. Your preference for certain foods, entertainment, relationships, and even spiritual practices might be influenced by frequencies you don't even perceive exist. Real consciousness awakening begins when you develop the ability to distinguish between genuine impulses from your divine essence and external control programming. This discrimination isn't paranoia, but refined spiritual discernment that all authentic mystics developed. Practices like fasting, deep meditation, and periods of solitude aren't random austerities, but tested methods for clearing archontic influences from the nervous system. Jesus fasted because he knew certain frequencies can only be removed through specific purification. But understanding the control system is just the first step. There's an entire universe of ancient traditions that preserved practical methods to transcend these limitations. For thousands of years, secret societies and esoteric traditions guarded fragments of wisdom that could completely transform our understanding of consciousness awakening. While exoteric religions offered diluted versions of spirituality to the masses, initiatic schools preserved real illumination techniques through symbols, coded rituals, and teachings transmitted only from master to disciple. Ancient Egyptians developed an entire mysticism system based on understanding the three human types, using different chambers in pyramids for specific initiations of each energetic nature. Jewish Kabbalists encoded this gnosis in the tree of life, where each sphere represents distinct aspects of human awakening according to individual constitution. Islamic Sufis created dances, breathing techniques, and contemplative practices personalized to lead different types of seekers to divine union experiences. Jesus himself was initiated in these occult traditions during his lost years, returning with revolutionary syntheses that threatened established religious structures. The transformative energy of these teachings was so potent it needed to be hidden in parables, alchemical symbols, and mystical allegories. Medieval alchemy wasn't simply about transforming metals into gold, but about transmuting human nature through specific consciousness awakening processes. Alchemists understood that light beings, earthbound folks, and fireborn required different operations to achieve illumination, encoding these variations in apparently chemical symbols. The solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate process, described how different human types first needed to dissolve specific limiting patterns before crystallizing superior states of awareness. Alchemical laboratories were actually inner transformation temples, where practitioners applied precise awakening formulas based on their individual energetic constitution. Paracelsus and other masters developed elixirs that not only healed the physical body, but activated dormant consciousness centers according to the patient's spiritual nature. Alchemical spirituality was applied mysticism science, producing measurable and reproducible results when practiced correctly. Jesus used alchemical principles when he multiplied bread, transformed water into wine, and transmuted consciousness states through touch. These weren't violations of natural laws, but applications of superior laws preserved by occult traditions. Secret societies like the Templars, Rosicrucians, and certain Masonic lineages weren't social clubs, but custodians of spiritual technologies that could dramatically accelerate consciousness awakening. Their initiation rituals weren't symbolic theater, but energetic procedures designed to activate specific latent capacities according to the candidate's human type. Increasing degrees of initiation corresponded to expanded levels of gnosis, where each stage revealed deeper aspects of reality's nature and transcendence methods. Templars discovered ancient Gnostic texts describing consciousness technologies So advanced they were accused of heresy and persecuted by the official church. Rosicrucians preserved alchemical knowledge about how different human energies could be refined and directed to manifest sustainable illumination states. Esoteric Masonry, different from social, maintained complete awakening systems based on sacred geometry and mathematical proportions that resonate with specific human consciousness structures. When Jesus gathered disciples in circles and taught through geometric symbols drawn in sand, he was applying principles preserved by these initiatic traditions. Eastern traditions developed incredibly detailed maps of consciousness states accessible through specific practices for each human constitution. The chakra system isn't generic, but varies according to whether you're predominantly a light being, earthbound, or fireborn. Each type has different energetic activation sequences for safe and effective awakening. Tantric masters created breathing, visualization, and mantra techniques personalized to lead different human natures through specific awareness transformations. Zen developed koans and contemplative methods that work differently depending on the practitioner's mental and energetic structure. Authentic yoga, not the westernized version, included precise constitutional diagnosis before prescribing individualized, consciousness awakening practices. Tibetan Buddhism preserved complete illumination systems, recognizing at least 9 different types of human mind, each requiring unique approaches to transcendence. Jesus studied with Eastern masters and incorporated these differentiated methodologies into his teachings, offering personalized paths for different disciples according to their natural capacities and limitations. The most explosive knowledge, preserved by these occult traditions, isn't just awakening techniques, but reality maps revealing multiple existence dimensions accessible through expanded consciousness states. Mystics from all cultures report similar experiences of higher planes, non-physical entities, and manifestation technologies operating through principles very different from conventional physics. These aren't hallucinations or fantasies, but systematic explorations of consciousness territories existing beyond consensual reality. Shamans developed methods for conscious navigation through these dimensions, bringing back practical knowledge and healing energy. Kabbalists created detailed maps of superior worlds and specific techniques for gradual ascension through them. Esoteric spirituality was always about controlled awareness expansion beyond 3-dimensional limitations, not just uplifting feelings or consoling philosophies. Jesus demonstrated access to these dimensions when he physically appeared and disappeared, healed through laying on of hands, and new information he couldn't have obtained through normal means. But there's something even more fundamental. These traditions preserved knowledge about how to apply all this to liberate not just individuals, but humanity as a whole. The moment of truth has arrived for you to discover which type of energy inhabits your being and how this completely revolutionizes your consciousness awakening journey. This isn't academic information, but applicable knowledge that can accelerate your spiritual evolution by decades when used correctly. Light beings often feel displaced in the material world, experiencing inexplicable nostalgia for home and natural connections to contemplative practices since childhood. If you always knew you were different, if spirituality flows through you effortlessly, and if people seek your presence to find peace, you carry the primordial energy of illumination. Earthbound folks find purpose through structure, discipline, and physical manifestation of spiritual values. If regular practices, consistent rituals, and gradual progress resonate deeply with you, you possess the constructive force that anchors divine light in the material plane. Fireborn feel constant urgency for transformation, question everything intensely, and experience dramatic cycles of destruction and renewal. If you can't accept ready-made answers about spirituality and feel compulsion to revolutionize obsolete systems, you carry the catalyzing energy of collective awakening. Jesus recognized these differences when he offered personalized teachings to each disciple, knowing that authentic gnosis respects each seeker's individual nature. Recognizing your energetic constitution eliminates years of spiritual trial and error, directing you toward practices that produce exponential results instead of frustration. Light beings benefit from extended periods of silence, nature contemplation, and techniques that amplify their natural sensitivity to higher dimensions. Long meditations, periodic fasting, and retreat periods dramatically accelerate their awakening. Earthbound folks thrive with structured practices like daily yoga, regular mantras, systematic study of sacred texts, and engagement in compassionate service, expressing spirituality through concrete action. Fireborn need intense challenges that break their limitations quickly. Tantric practices, ego dissolution experiences, radical questioning of beliefs, and controlled exposure to extreme consciousness states. When Jesus fasted 40 days, he was applying a fire technique. When he taught through simple parables, he used earthbound methods. When he withdrew for contemplative prayer, he accessed light frequencies. Effective mysticism isn't uniform, but personalized according to your fundamental energetic nature. Illumination doesn't have a standard format, but 1,000 different paths leading to the same mountain. True freedom begins when you stop trying to fit into spiritual molds created for other energy types and start honoring your authentic awakening. Nature. This understanding reveals why certain spiritual practices never worked for you, not from lack of dedication, but from fundamental energetic incompatibility. Light beings who force earthbound practices feel suffocated and disconnected. Earthbound folks who try advanced mystical experiences without adequate preparation can become unbalanced. Fireborn who follow overly contemplative paths feel repressed and frustrated. Gnosticism teaches that each type has an optimal route to transcendence that, when followed correctly, produces profound and lasting transformations. Jesus demonstrated this flexibility when he healed through different methods, sometimes physical touch for earthbound folks, sometimes words for light beings, sometimes direct confrontation for fireborn. Personalized spirituality isn't luxury, but necessity for genuine awakening. When you align your practices with your natural energetic constitution, resistance decreases and progress accelerates exponentially. The practical application of this wisdom extends far beyond personal practices, influencing how you relate, work, and contribute to humanity's collective awakening. Light beings serve best as silent beacons, emanating elevated frequencies that automatically elevate their surrounding environment. Their mere presence awakens others without need for preaching or direct teaching. Earthbound folks excel at creating structures, institutions, and systems supporting sustainable spiritual growth. Wisdom schools, conscious communities, and organizations manifesting elevated values in the practical world. Fireborn function as catalysts challenging spiritual status quo, introducing new possibilities, and breaking collective limitations through radical example. When you understand not just your own nature, but recognize energetic types around you, you can collaborate in ways that amplify mutual awakening instead of creating conflict over approach differences. Jesus gathered disciples of all three types, creating transformative synergy that changed the course of human consciousness. Spiritual revolution happens when different energies work together, respecting their unique natures, not trying to convert everyone to the same method. The knowledge you now possess about the three human types is just the beginning of a journey that can transform not only your personal life, but your contribution to the conscious evolution of the human species. This ancient gnosis was hidden because it represents real power, the power to awaken efficiently, transcend programmed limitations, and operate from superior frequencies independent of external circumstances. When you apply these principles consistently, your life becomes a laboratory of conscious transformation where every experience contributes to your spiritual refinement. Spirituality stops being reality escape to become the most practical tool you possess for navigating and transforming any situation. Jesus lived this total integration, demonstrating how illuminated awareness can operate fully in the world without being limited by it. Your awakening journey now has clear direction, tested methods, and deep understanding of your unique nature. The only remaining question is, are you ready to apply this knowledge and discover how far your energy can take you when finally free to express your authentic essence? Now you know the truth that was hidden for millennia. Are you a light being seeking transcendence through contemplation, an earthbound person building spirituality through structured practices, or a fire-born soul destined to transform the world? This isn't just information, it's your key to accelerating consciousness awakening decades ahead. Stop forcing methods inadequate for your energetic nature. Start today applying practices aligned with your real type. Watch how your spirituality becomes exponentially more effective when you honor your authentic essence. The question is, will you continue fighting against your own nature or finally embrace who you really are? The world needs all three types awakened, operating at their maximum potential. Your personal transformation is part of humanity's conscious revolution. What kind of impact do you choose to create? Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to keep discovering occult knowledge that can transform your reality forever.